Hi, this is Dr. Michael Bogart with Aspect Ministries. This is part of my DIY series on how I built some steps from some new materials and some recycled materials in kind of an odd place with a kind of an odd configuration and blended it into some existing structures. So here we go. Okay, so you see we have a spa, and that left some room over to the left side of the spa, my left side. And you can see that, there's the upper room. One of our sons lived there for a while before he moved out on his own. And now we have, really no way to get down because the stairs were kind of rotten and I took them out. So I've had to build this stairway that went up from the gravel. Of course, I'm going to replace those temporary steps onto the railroad ties. We're going to fix that. And then into this really weird shape that's almost a rectangle, except for one side is angled. So I had to figure out how to do that. I don't know if you can see, but I did have, as I poured the concrete before we put the spa in, I did put some wooden blocks in, the kind that are on the concrete piers, so that only the wooden part, the pressure treated wood, is above the concrete. So I've got that. And so you can see, the first thing I did was I made the bottom frame. So it's a rectangle on, two of its corners, and then it's angled in the other two up against this retaining wall right here. So the next thing I did was then to raise it up about 1.5 inches off the concrete. And I did that with these temporary feet that I put in right there and there. And there were some others on the other side that I've already taken out. Once I had it leveled and up to the right, height above the concrete so that I could actually, hose off maybe some of the leaves and junk that would get under it so that I don't have it just trapped under there. I then put the posts in for the railing. They're not quite plumb yet, but you can see they're in. Over here is another one. There's not going to be one on this side because I want steps to come from this direction as well as from this direction. So we got the posts in. We're going to plumb them out later. And then I have the first of the decking boards in. And I thought maybe I would, at this point, before I got too much further along, I would show you what I was going to do. So that's it for now. And then when I have some more done, I will show you the rest of the process. One thing I forgot to mention was that the span, in terms of the length of the base, is too wide for these 2x6s. So I had to put a middle brace, just a 2x4, kind of in the middle of the span to help support that. So just wanted to make sure that you understand that this has to be structurally sound. The other thing I'm going to do is, you can see that the ends of these planks are uneven. I'm going to go ahead and I'll snap a line and I will cut them off even now that they're in place. Okay, a little more time has passed and I've had some things I've had to do in the last few days. But what you can see there is I've added a second step along with a little bit of framing of the posts that are going to be the banisters for the railings coming down. So all you can see is I just built a smaller version of the first step on top of it. And of course I've secured it down with screws and so forth. And I think I may make one more step up onto the landing here. Disregard my tools. So, and you can see that I was able to use some 2x6s that had been part of another structure on my property. I was able to take that structure apart and reuse it. You can see I filled in the nail and screw holes with some caulking. And of course, all of this is going to be painted, so you'll never see it. All right, and I'll continue on with the next step. And of course, I've got to build the bottom step. That's an old thing that's going to be replaced right there. and of course the railings, and probably a landing up there where you see, right in there where you see my driver. There's going to be a landing, I think, as well. Anyway, to be continued. Well, it's rained since I last had a chance to work on this project, and since then I've added this lower step. It's got some 4x4 posts on the near corners, and it's leg screwed into the railroad ties on the back side. And it's just made out of 2x6s. This top step was a bit of a puzzle at first. You can see that the lower steps and platforms are going a certain direction, but then of course I had to deal with this wall. The wall's at an angle to everything else, so I had to deal with that. I just decided to make the top step parallel with the wall, and you just have to twist as you go up the steps, which is what you would do anyway. So that's going to be great. I'm going to fix this upper landing. Right now it's not very conducive to safety, so I'm going to repair that, and I'll add that to the end of this video. And also, of course, we have to do the banisters, and you see the posts are already in, and I'll do the banisters and railings at the very end. Now this part was the puzzle. I have these ugly old railroad ties that form kind of the barrier or the containing wall for this upper cement patio my pool is on, and I'd rather not have these steps exposed, so I'm going to have to cover them probably with some 2x6s pressure treated, and just kind of clean it up a little bit, just so at least this part, which is the ugliest part, can be hidden. The rest of it's not as bad. So we'll see. I'll see what I can do. That's going to be quite a challenge to make sure it's all level and very smooth so that the steps are not dangerous. All right, so my plan for this covering up and making of a decent step on these ugly railroad ties is to use a couple of 2x6 pressure treated and then a piece of cedar fence board. I'm going to cut them all down to fit and frame around those bottom steps, and hopefully it will look nice. So let's see if I can pull it off. Okay, so I had said I was going to try to encase these sort of ugly railroad ties into something that would be part of the steps. Rather than step on the railroad tie, I wanted something that would be consistent with the rest of the stair structure. So I took a piece of cedar fencing, skirt fencing, the skirting for cedar fencing, and I encased down here with so that the railroad tie would not show. And then these are simply pressure treated 2x6s. And of course I had to level everything out so that it wouldn't be uneven, but I think that looks pretty good. And of course my next thing is I have to deal with that landing up here. That's not the way I want it. Got to make it a little safer going on up to that spare room. Okay, so this landing here is about 3 feet long, and it's really too long because if you're coming up this step, part of where you might step next is going to run into this corner. So what I want to do is I kind of want to take from about here, this stepping stone forward. I want to take that part out. So I might have to cut that concrete I poured, or just pour some different concrete in there. But anyway, I want to take that part out, and down here is what I want to make it so that it's not level, because the wall itself is not. You have to take my word for it. Well, maybe not. Anyway, you can see that the wall is at an angle. So what I'm going to do is try to build this up to match that angle so that when you step up from this step, you'll step onto something fairly consistent. Okay, you can see what I've done so far. The bottom step all the way up to the top. And what I was concerned about yesterday was this landing up here, which originally came to about right, the corner of that landing right there extended out to about right there, which would mean that as you stepped off the top step here, you'd be stepping into a corner. And I wanted to fix that, so I shortened this, had to cut the concrete with a masonry blade, and then rebuild the frame. And then I had to figure this out. This is not level, but it is consistent with the slope, so you're not going to trip over anything. So now you're stepping off onto something nice and easy to negotiate. The last thing I'm going to do, of course, is to build the railings. I'm going to probably put another 4x4 post about right here, and then of course connect it with this, and another 4x4 post down at the bottom step, so that there'll be a railing all the way down, and then a railing on that side too. And then of course we're going to put some nice outdoor paint so that everything looks the same. All right, well, I've finished the banisters, and I'm going to get a little closer. You can see I've done some filling of some holes and so forth with some wood filler here. That's all that is. That's going to get painted anyway. Here's the banisters. I've got the top rail. I've got a support under the top rail. I've got the slats, and of course the bottom rail in. That works for this side as well. And let me go around and show you the upper portion. Here's the upper portion. Ties into what was already there, which is right there. And then a little bit of a railing to stop people if they've got a little too much momentum as they come down these stairs, like so. Come down the stairs, you've got that top rail, and then on down here. Then we'll put some paint on it and be done. So this is it. This is the existing structure to the right. That part of the banister was there. This lower descending part was built into it. I had to modify the steps coming down and the landing, and then all of these steps going all the way down. And I'm rather proud of how it turned out. So hopefully this can be helpful to you in your own do-it-yourself project. And it's been a pleasure doing it. This is Dr. Michael Bogart with Aspect Ministries with the DIY series.